Hey everybody out there in Facebook land, it's your Facebook friend Robert Jumalan. Hey, and as most of you already know, I'm a I'm a godless heathen. That's right, I'm an atheist, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. It was a journey. I started out as a Christian when I was a kid. My parents took me to Sunday school every Sunday up until I was about 9. I was baptized when I was 6, and we went to a Lutheran church, and my parents had me baptized, and my mom selected her best friend, her lifelong childhood friend, to be my godmother. And unbeknownst to my mom, my godmother was an atheist, and still is, by the way. So I just want to say hi to my godmother. Hey, Julie, if you're watching this. uh, anyway, a lot of people ask me, why are you an atheist? How did you become an atheist? And, well, as most atheists will tell you, most people are born atheists. They get indoctrinated into religion as they get older, and that happened to me. I was a Christian, and I did believe in God. I said my prayers every night. Now I lay me down to sleep, and that whole thing there that everybody tells their kids to do. My mom and dad used to read us bedtime Bible stories. They had a bedtime Bible story book, and they would read us all the stories about Noah's Ark and that sort of thing. And, as a little kid, you believe that because your parents are telling you this, so you figure if they believe it, you gotta believe it too. But as I got older, I started realizing that a lot of the stories in the Bible were just too unrealistic, scientifically impossible. If you look at the Noah's Ark, for instance, I mean, there's no way that all of those animals could have fit inside that ark, and there is no way that animals from all over the world could have gotten to that one location to board that ark. And then once they did get aboard that ark, where did they find the room for all the food? Who shoveled all the poop? So it just seems just too far fetched. And then, of course, you get to the whole virgin birth thing. Anybody who knows anything about human biology knows that that's impossible without the aid of in vitro fertilization, which came many centuries later. So, anyway, I'm doing the best I can without God, without prayers, and I think I'm doing okay. I have my problems, everybody does. There are people who are far more worse off than I am, who are very devout Christians. And now that I've come to the age of reason and logic, I have no need for religion or faith of any kind. So I'm sure everybody has their own individual, unique story about how they became enlightened, if you want to call it that. Uh, I woke up many years ago. I think I posted the story. I typed it all out, but I'll go over it again because it's better when I tell it in person. But years ago, I was in the United States Navy. I had just gotten discharged from the Navy, as a matter of fact, and I had a CB radio base station in my bedroom. And it was late one night. It was probably around 11 o'clock at night. And this guy gets on the radio, and he says, "Breaker 19, are there any friends out there?" So I was always anxious to talk to somebody on the CB radio because that was my hobby, man. I was into CB radio. So I said, "Yeah, go ahead. I'm a friend, I guess." And he says, "Well, friend," he kept calling me friend. He says, "Have you heard the good news?" And I said, "No, I don't suppose I have. What news are you speaking of?" And he asked me where I was, and I told him, the name of the town where I was. And he says, "Oh, yeah, there's a McDonald's right up the street from there." He says, "If you meet me there in 15 minutes, I've got some great news for you, friend." So, being naive, I was only 19 or 20 years old at the time. Um, I was naive and curious. So I said, okay, let me go find out what this guy has to say. I didn't have anything else to do. So I got in my car and drove up to the McDonald's. And I met this guy. And he says, follow me. I'm going to take you to this place where magic happens. Now, if somebody had told me that today, I probably would have been very suspicious. So I said, okay. So followed this guy down the road, and of course he pulls into the parking lot of a church, which, at 11 o'clock at night I figured would be closed. Well, it was. He had the key to the basement door, and I looked through the window and I noticed all the lights were on in there, so I figured, well, at least he's not going to mug me in there. So we go into this basement, and there's folding chairs set up in rows like church, with a little aisle down in between the middle of them, and of course there was like a little makeshift altar there. Of course, a big picture of Jesus behind the altar. And he hands me this little paperback pocket Bible. He goes, I want you to take this and spread the word of God. And then he had me recite that silly little prayer about accepting Jesus Christ into your heart and all that sort of thing, and told me that I was born again. And he said, do you feel any different? And I said, no, not really. He goes, you don't feel anything at all? And I said, no. And he says, okay. He goes, well, when you get home, repeat that prayer over again a couple of times. It'll sink in. I said, oh, okay. So that's how it works. And he said, oh, yeah, it works. And I said, okay, well, what else do you want me to do? So he handed me a list, a little printout that was typed of several different verses. And he said, whenever I encounter somebody that needs guidance, he goes, use these verses to bring them to Christ. I can't remember off the top of my head what specific verses these were now, but so I said, okay. And it was just me and him in there, because apparently there were no services going on that time of night. So I took my little pocket Bible, and for the next week or so, I approached various people that I encountered and tried to bring them to Christ. A couple of people already told me, hey, I'm already born again, but thank you anyway. And some people just shut me down completely and just said, I don't want to hear that mess. So I wasn't discouraged. So this friend that I met on the CB radio invited me to come to the service on Sunday evening, because they couldn't have their basement service while the regular church service was going on upstairs. So I showed up at 9 o'clock at night on Sunday evening, and we went down to the basement. There was probably maybe 20 other people there. And of course, a guy who called himself a pastor, who was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He didn't even have a little collar thing around like a normal pastor would. So he got up there, and the services began, and he had everybody stand and sing some church hymn. I think it was How Great Thou Art or something like that. It was one of those church hymns. They had little hymn books they passed around. So then everything seemed pretty normal at first. We sat down. He recited a couple prayers. He discussed the perils of sinning and the torture of hell, and then he talked about the grace of God and how great heaven is, as if he had actually been there and knew what he was talking about. So I even then, I was still kind of skeptical of the whole thing, and I still am. But after the whole service was over, he had everybody stand up, and he said, hey, before you all leave, let's do a final prayer circle. So everybody gather in a circle and join hands. So I'm standing there, and I've got somebody's hand in each of my hands, and everybody's gathered around. And the preacher starts reciting a prayer, and about halfway through the prayer, he starts going, blah, 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 blah. And then everybody else started doing it too, and falling down and rolling around on the floor. And I just stepped back, just looked at this mess, and I started wondering, what the hell was in that communion wine? Because they did communion. So I took my little pocket Bible out of my pocket, left it on the table, and made a break for the door and never looked back. And I know all churches don't do that. I've been to several different types of churches. I've been to a Catholic church. I've been to, of course, the Lutheran church that I went to when I was in Sunday school and stuff. And I've been to actual services. And I know some of these little offshoot interdenominational churches are kind of weird, but that wasn't what made me an atheist, though. I guess there was another preacher that I met that was an actual preacher, an actual ordained minister. And I had a lot of questions about Christianity and Jesus and God and all that stuff. And I can't remember what the exact questions were, but he told me, he said, all the answers are in the Bible, my friend. Or son, he called me son. Read your Bible. Read it religiously. Read all you can, because all the words of God are in the Bible. I said, okay, I can do that. So I went home and I got a King James Version Bible. And I went through that thing page by page, verse by verse, from cover to cover. I read that entire thing, and I got to admit, it was a thick, leather-bound King James Version Bible. I tell you what, that was no easy task. Lucky cat. He's meowing at me. But anyway, that was no easy task. A lot of these and thous and all kinds of weird words I'd never heard before. And but I read the whole thing, and I didn't fully understand much of it because it was just so strange. But years later, I took on that task once again, and my reading and comprehension skills had improved greatly by this point. I went ahead and read it again, and I picked a different version this time, the newer version that was in plain language. I can't think of the actual version. It's the American Standard Version or whatever it was. But anyway, it was easier to understand. And I began to realize there is no way that any of this can be real. Absolutely no way. And the fact that people actually believe this stuff was just totally bizarre to me. So it was then that I began claiming to be an atheist. And when they came out with MySpace, I got onto a computer. I actually went out and bought a computer, and they ask you to fill out your little profile just like Facebook does. And of course, one of the little questions on there was, what is your religious status? And I typed in atheist. The next thing I know, I was getting all kinds of instant messages from my family. They were like, why are you doing this to us? Why are you embarrassing us by doing this? I was like, hey, this is who I am. I'm an atheist, and I don't believe in that nonsense. And I got a lot of questions from my siblings as well. Mom and Dad are very upset with you right now. You shouldn't have done this. Oh, hey, back off, man. I'm an adult. I can do whatever the hell I want. So I did apologize to them, and I said, well, look, okay. I said, well, since, this is a public profile, I'll go ahead and just change it to none as far as religious views are concerned. I was trying to keep peace within the family. I didn't want to cause them any pain or embarrassment. I didn't intend to do that anyway. So when it came down to Facebook, a few years later, I got on Facebook, and the funny thing is, my parents encouraged me to get on Facebook. Hey, the whole family's on Facebook now. Nobody's on MySpace anymore. All of your school friends are on Facebook too. You can reconnect with all of these people. Okay. Little devil horns popped up. So when I filled out my profile, I put down as religious views, atheist. It was then that I stopped hearing from my parents and my brothers and sisters. They don't respond to any of my posts, even the funny ones that are not atheist related. I imagine they blocked me from their news feed. They didn't unfriend me or block me, but they what do they call that? Hid me from their news feed, so they don't see my posts. But if I tag them in a post, they will see it. But I don't tag them in atheist related stuff. I don't torture them that way, and they don't deserve that. But I do tag my sisters, in some of the kitten posts that I find funny or amusing, and some of the other little memes and stuff that are hilarious, and they respond to those. But if I post something and don't tag anybody, they don't respond because they're not seeing my posts. So I imagine that a lot of atheists go through this. They get shunned by their families because of the difference in religious views. And I don't think it was the atheism in itself that turned them off. I think a lot of it had to do with my anti-Republican posts, especially my anti-Trump posts. My parents are Trumpsters, and I imagine my brother and sisters are as well. I know my son, who was very close to his grandfather, supports Trump. It's sad how that kind of gets passed down from one person to another. My father, he listened to Rush Limbaugh for years, and I know my parents watch Fox News, so it's a shame because they're better than that. They really are, and they probably feel sorry for me because I'm a libtard, but I feel sorry for them because they support a guy who's ruining this country for real, and they still believe that Obama ruined this country. But we all know better, don't we? So I'm just going to leave it at that. And my buddy Lucky Cat's over here howling behind me. He wants me to lay down. He doesn't like it when I sit up and talk to the computer. So y'all have a good night. And say your prayers if you want. I'm not. Y'all have a good night.